I think that my approach, and this is also this I think played into um mentorship roles that I had on the team, and like glue award, stuff like that, is I really think that a lot of athletes that perform at like an elite level especially are incredibly critical of themselves, and like a lot of times a little neurotic, and like super they're perfectionists and like ultra detail oriented, and that's just like so hard to live in your head like that, especially when you have to perform really well. So for me, I tried, and not tried, but my like mindset was always like, this is not the end of the world. Like, to perform at my best and to be the best, I need to like be present, and I need to not be so like stuck in my own head, because I've never seen that work for anybody.
You are listening to the Bridging Impact Podcast, transforming leaders on and off the court with host Coach Furtado. Without further ado, let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Bridging Impact Podcast. And in today's episode, I have not one, but two guests here. Guest number one, Cooper Pup, the most important one. And number two, my beautiful girlfriend, Addie Lacewell, former Division I athlete, All-American in Acro and Tumbling, and multiple-time Glue Award winner. We'll dive into that a little bit more. And this is going to be a little bit of a different episode. Obviously, with our dynamic, we're a little bit closer than my typical podcast guest. And we'll also kind of dive in a little bit more on the athlete experience side of thing and how sports really help develop her in her process of becoming a young adult. So welcome to the show, Addie.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so we're going to start with the same question that I start with everyone. How did sports have an impact on your life?
Yeah. Well, I mean, my parents put me in sports as soon as I could walk, basically. I had a lot of energy. I was kind of a menace, so they needed to blow off some steam. They needed me to blow off some steam. So I've been in a sport since the time I was like 3 or 4, and I don't think I had a break from sports until after I graduated from college. So all of my major like life memories and accomplishments are tied to sports. I think now, like in the workforce and with other people, like the main strengths that I have come from being an athlete, come from working with a lot of different personalities and with a lot of different coaches. So like I attribute most of my strengths and most of my qualities that people tend to highlight to sports and like my time in sports. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. And before we talk about your collegiate journey, most athletes or most people don't play collegiate sports. So talking about the kind of the lessons, or I guess the experience that you had specifically as a Jessie White tumbler, can you talk
Yeah.
about how that really helped shape you and your ability to connect with people with different backgrounds and in different life experiences than your own?
Yeah. So I guess should I do a little background on what that is?
Yeah. What is that?
So Jessie White Tumbling Team is a program out of Chicago. Jessie White's like the longest serving state senator. And he is from south side of Chicago, and he started a tumbling team for inner city kids, where all these kids would come and like we would perform at like Bulls halftime shows, like cookouts, barbecues, parades. But yeah, it was just supposed to be like an outlet for kids that lived in the inner city to like have an escape, a safe place to go, get paid, and perform. So yeah, I heard of Jessie White, or how I got involved is I had a teammate when I was a competitive cheerleader who did it, and she was like, "You should just try out, like give it a shot." I showed up, and I was definitely out of my element. I'm not from the South Side; I'm from the suburbs of Chicago. But I tried out when I was like 12 or 13, maybe. I was one of the youngest kids there, made the team, and I was also the only white kid there. They had a couple of nicknames for me: Snowflake, Light Bright. But I very quickly had to, like, first of all, I was 12. Second of all, I was one of the probably in any given group, like 2 or 3 girls were like a part of the team. So it was like, 20 dudes, a lot of which were like 20, 30 years old, and me. So really quickly, I had to realize that I was hanging out with people and working with people that are not the same people that are at my competitive cheerleading gym back in like Naperville. Um, and that people, they were going to be tougher on me. They were going to be um, tougher kids in general. And I had to like really adapt quickly and like figure out like get in where you fit in sort of thing. Um, and yeah, so I just had to learn how to be resilient and like not take shit from people, but also they didn't trust me coming in because why would you? So yeah, it was like a really quick and good exercise in learning how to make friends that are different from you and like build community and build trust quickly. Yeah, it was a great experience.
I think one of the things that I hear in there is like almost a trial by fire, right? You're kind of
Mm-hmm.
just thrown in the deep end, so to speak. And I think a lot of times what I see as someone that works a lot with youth basketball, from third grade on up to high school is
Yeah.
a lot of times I see one of the challenges that I see parents and even potentially coaches trying to kind of shelter their athletes from failure
Yeah.
and discomfort when, obviously brought you out of your comfort zone is a lot different than your competitive cheerleading in Naperville, right?
Yeah.
And you got to interact and connect with different people and have the opportunity to really develop, that skill set to be able to connect with so many different people. So can
Yeah.
you talk about how that ability to connect with different walks of life, right, have really helped you be a 2-time Glue Award winner?
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think that that's right. Like, definitely trial by fire. What I learned about trial by fire, though, and like you can attest to this too about my personality, is I tend to be um, pretty tough and tough on people sometimes, and definitely like I'm not a bootstrapper when it comes to politics, stuff like that, but when it comes to like athletics and stuff, I definitely have like a tendency to be like, we got to buck up, like you have to do this. However, like that like mindset shifted in sports for me, like after high school, I'd say. Like I hate when people feel uncomfortable in a situation. Like I hate when people feel left out. That's something that like really yeah, that always has bothered me. So when I got to Oregon, I when you're a Division 1 athlete, like, and you come in as the new girls, and my class was really big when we came in. We started with 20 freshmen, 20 incoming freshmen at University of Oregon, and by the end of the year, we were down to 7 freshmen. So like a lot of folks quit, and like when you're one of 20 new girls on a team of like, and there were probably 30 girls, 25 girls we got when we got there, sophomores to seniors, and girls are also competitive and like can be a little catty, so you have to prove yourself, and girls aren't going to give you it's not going to be easy to prove yourself. So I saw it as an opportunity to be like, okay, I'm going to take shit from some of these girls, and then once they feel like I've earned my spot, then that's my opportunity to like make sure that doesn't happen to other people that come into the program. So I think like the Glue Award came from, I felt like it was really important to make everybody feel like welcome and like they played a role in the team's success, even if that meant that they weren't on the mat or like competing with us. Like some of the most important like athletes and teammates I had were not the best, like the quote unquote best athletes on the team. They were like the people that would check in on you when they could sense something was going on, or like the people that would invite you over, the girls that would come to you at practice and be like, "What's up? Like, what's going on?" Make you feel like you weren't an outsider. So I really like adopted that mindset when I came into the University of Oregon, and yeah, I think that the Glue Award had nothing to do really with like my skill level and like awards, technical awards and stuff like that I would win for UO. It was definitely like I really made an effort to make people feel like comfortable and like that they mattered in the sport.
I think that's a great point for those that are listening, and it's a lot of coaches that listen to this podcast, and of course parents. And we talked about the importance of going through challenging circumstances and facing adversity, right, or being the person that doesn't feel like they belong. And I feel like it's also very important for coaches, especially, to build a culture and an environment where people feel like they are accepted and they feel like they belong. So
Yeah.
when you talk about that and the kind of the shift between when you came in as a freshman to where you left as a senior,
Yeah.
how do you think that environment shifted? Like, what specific stories or not necessarily activities, but parts of the culture do you feel like really shifted?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, when I came into the program, there was a big immediate culture shift because my class had been recruited by one coach, and then she left the program before we got there. So we came in with a coach we weren't recruited with. So yeah, I think the culture was just a little shaky. I think that by the time we left, and I love, as you know, most of my best friends are the girls that were in my class at University of Oregon on the acro team. And I think we all made a really concerted effort to be sounding boards for incoming girls, and to not be so scary like that. It really is. I wish I knew. I'm sure it happen. Of course, it happens in men's sports too, but it's just different in women's sports. Earning your place and earning respect from women by other women is it's just really difficult. I don't know how exactly to explain it. So I think by the time that we were seniors, the culture had shifted where it wasn't freshmen shut up and just take it. And we're not gonna come after girls at practice. And that's not to say that that was what was happening necessarily when I was a freshman by upperclassmen, but there's a hierarchy, in
Right.
sports, and especially when you come into a team that big. So yeah, by the time we left, I think there was definitely freshmen felt, at least I hope so. I mean, they can let me know if not, but I think they felt more confident and more welcome and more at ease with the upperclassmen than we did when we came in as freshmen.
That makes a lot of sense, and it's good to see the culture shifting. And um, you know, first off, I would like you to number one, explain what acro and tumbling is for those that are listening, and at the same time, right, it's such a big team, right? It's almost y'all are almost as big as a football team,
Yeah.
and there are a lot of different events, right? That I'll let you kind of explain a little bit more. However, it seems like cohesiveness is incredibly important for a lot of what you are doing, which makes team camaraderie all the more important.
Yeah. I mean, I still haven't perfected my acro and tumbling elevator pitch, but it's just it's how we would describe it as a combination of gymnastics and competitive cheerleading. So think tumbling like gymnasts do on the floor, on the floor exercise, that kind of tumbling with stunts like you would see in competitive cheerleading, but none of the rah, none of the cheering for other teams. We have an audience. We don't go and perform for other people. It's a Division 1 NCAA emerging sport, so it's legit, is what I'm trying to say. Not that anything else isn't legit, but a lot of people sometimes think that it's it was a club that I participated in. It was not a club. And yeah, so there are a lot of moving parts. There's tumbling event, acro event, and within those two events, there are subcategories. So you have things like 5-element acro, 5-element tumbling. That means just 5 skills within an acro event. So yeah, there were girls on the team that were just there for acro. I was one of them. I came in injured. I couldn't tumble like I used to. I was initially recruited to be a tumbler. But yeah, so I switched to just competing in acro events, and then there are girls that are just tumblers, really. And then there are the select few that can do both really well. So yeah, trust and team building are paramount in making sure that everything runs smoothly.
So can you break down what give us an example of a certain acro and the amount of cohesion that is needed to kind of break to make sure it's successful, because if not, you can get really hurt.
Right. So I was fortunate enough that I had the same acro partner for three out of my 4 years. Kayleen, if Kayleen's listening, shout out. So Kayleen was my top. I was the person throwing her and performing the acros, and she was my little tiny person that I got to throw around. So I mean, me and Kayleen have to be like completely in sync. And then at any given time, I typically I think had just one other like accessory person there that would do maybe like one of the elements of the acro with me. But I mean, if anything's off, we have to like trust each other, not only with counts, but like with feeling. If she does something differently than I would expect in practice, like I have to adapt to that quickly and vice versa. And like when you compete sometimes, like the adrenaline gets the best of you. You can overthrow somebody. You can, you do things sometimes differently than you would in a practice. So, I mean, it required a lot of timing with one another, a lot of trust. And yeah, I mean, if things go wrong, if somebody's really off, like you could break a neck, you could definitely break bones. I've seen a lot of accidents happen at practice. Yeah.
Yeah, to me, it's such a precise sport. And I think one of the things for all athletes is, right, we want to perform at our best. And with a sport where you are judged for every single micro movement, you have to always perform your best. I think one of the things that you do particularly well is you prepare for games in ways that helps you, or prepare for meets and in ways that help you personally be successful, which then helps the team be successful. Can you talk about your kind of like mental approach to performance?
Like me specifically?
You specifically.
Yeah, I mean, I think that my approach, and this is also this I think played into like mentorship roles that I had on the team, and like glue award, stuff like that, is I really think that a lot of athletes that perform at like an elite level especially are incredibly critical of themselves, and like a lot of times a little neurotic, and like super they're perfectionists and like ultra detail oriented, and that's just like so hard to live in your head like that, especially when you have to perform really well. So for me, I tried, and not tried, but my like mindset was always like, this is not the end of the world. Like to perform at my best and to be the best, I need to like be present, and I need to not be so like stuck in my own head, because I've never seen that work for anybody. Like any athlete that's so concerned about what's going on, every single little piece of like minutia, they always, am I allowed to cuss?
Yeah, enough.
Okay. They always fuck up, Like anytime that I see people, like I would say a lot of my teammates were like, I could see them in the corner getting ready for a tumbling pass, just like talking to themselves, like to like rubbing their hands together, just doing too much, like you're talking yourself out of being your best self, sort of thing. So yeah, I mean, my mental preparation was always like, I've done this a million times in practice. What's the worst thing that could possibly happen? We drop an acro. Somebody falls on a tumbling pass, which inevitably will happen at least once in a meet, what's going to happen? Like the world isn't going to end. And I know it sounds so simple. Like it's so easy to be like, just don't be nervous. And you can attest to, I'm a very anxious person in real life, like very anxious. But when it came to sports, like it just doesn't help you, doesn't serve you at all. Not that it serves you in real life either, but especially when the stakes are so low at the end of the day. Like we're not out here, we're not doctors and lawyers, we're just athletes. That was my mentality.
Yeah, so the perspective of it's not the end of the world. I'm gonna be alive. None of my family's gonna be hurt, and my teammates are gonna be okay, even if I fail. Right. So let's just go out, and go out and do what we do over and over again in practice. Right. Yeah. In basketball, I knock down all X amount of shots in practice. Yeah. Right. In acro, I make I'm precise on all my acro movements. Mm-hmm. So just kind of knowing and having that confidence. And of course you have to be competent in it, right? I can't just go into a game and be a good shooter if I've never put up any shots, right? Yeah. So, with that being said, I think kind of shifting gears to helping athletes have that perspective. Like, how did you help your teammates gain that perspective when, I think one of the things that athletes struggle with, and I remember I talked to one of my good friends that I played Little League with my entire life. He played Division I baseball, and he's said he had a horrible junior year, and I won't name his name because I'm not sure if he would be comfortable with this, but he went to a therapist and just really learned that baseball is, he wrapped up his entire identity in it.
Yeah.
And he talked to me about how, when he was pretty much like you, he was just like, fuck it, I'm just gonna go out and pitch. He ended up, he went to UC Davis, and so it's not the biggest school, and then shoved against University of Utah, which is not a mid-major, it's a high major Division I baseball, just because he's just like got out of his own way. So can you talk about how you helped other people, or strive to help other people gain that same perspective that being an athlete, whatever sport you are, is not the end of the world?
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough. Like, I think for me, like, I was so concerned about that being my only identity that I worked really hard to not just be an athlete, to do other stuff. And now, like, as I'm in the real world, I'm like, I kind of want to go back to being an athlete, and like, so it just, I don't know, it's like a cycle that you can't really get out of. But I think that it's, for me, helping my teammates, it was really important to like know how each one of your teammates works, like you can't approach, I'll use like Liv, one of my really good friends, Liv, I can approach her very differently than I can approach somebody like I don't even know, like Caitlin, like my friend Caitlin. Like Liv is like, you could just tell her like, come on girl, like get it together, and Liv's like, okay, whatever. Caitlin, it like requires a little bit more, like, let's talk through like what's going on in your head, and neither approach is the better approach, just depends on the athlete. But I think like for a lot of people, like that, adopting that mentality just like switches one day for you. Like one day you get it, you're just like, oh. And a lot of the times it comes after you're done competing. Like you look back a year after you've graduated and you're like, oh, I really did not need to like panic the way that I did, I think it was like, it was helpful to ask people like if they could genuinely recall like every single time that they messed up, and like, did the world end when you messed up, and it never does. Like I couldn't tell you what meets I could tell you that I can tell you I've dropped things and I've messed up at a competition, but I really do find that feeling like fades away, that like when you mess up that bad, fades away quicker than like I could tell you exactly how I felt when we beat Baylor, like that feeling sticks around a lot longer, the success feeling. I think some people might say differently, but I really couldn't tell you exactly what meets I messed up. I could tell you which meets I would like killed it,
Yeah, I hear you there. And so, you're kind of talking about focusing on, obviously, the world didn't end during those failures. And so kind of just shifting that perspective. And I think another thing that you touched on that was very important is to know your players, know your teammates, right? That's what a great leader does. And that is, I feel like, a bare minimum requirement to being a coach. And it takes a little bit of time. It takes probably, I'd say, a minimum of 3 months to really like get to know how your players tick, because you have to see them in different situations.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of time. And so one of the things that I see with this generation of athletes and even coaches like myself is like, we want to be a certain spot immediately because of social media. We want to have the microwave. We want to just put whether it's our companies in the microwave and it to grow overnight, or do you want to be an athlete and you want to become Steph Curry overnight or Caitlin Clark? What would your advice be about like kind of taking the long game and recognizing that it takes a while to become an All-American or to receive a Glue Award?
Ooh, that's a tough question. You're smirking at me.
Yeah, you got it.
I think that maybe, I don't know, this might not be like the advice that one might look for or like hope for, but I think that you have to be, I hate like this phrase, that our Justin and I's thing is like, he's corny, which is what I love about him. He's like, but like, we are very different leaders, you and I,
Right.
But you have to, this is why I said this, you have to like be just hungry enough, but not overly hungry that you are like standing in your own way. You know what I mean? Like if you are constantly like, I want to be an All-American, I want to be an All-American, like you're shooting yourself in the foot because it's not just being the best athlete. Like so much, I really do attribute like a lot of the accolades and stuff, not to just like my performance. Like there were girls on the team that could have been good enough to be in my spots, you know, but like their downfall was they were not as confident. Like they couldn't go out there and execute the same way every single time. Like there were stronger girls than me, there were like quicker girls than me, whatever it was. But like I attribute a lot of the stuff to just being like I'm I can really say that I felt like I was a really great teammate and like I executed when the time came because I wasn't so like this is it, like I have to do this, I need this, these are the things I want to get done in an X amount of time. Like I don't think that that is really helpful when it comes to something that's so unpredictable like sports, you know, like and it's not like tracked the same way that I don't know like a lawyer is, you know, like you do X to get Y whatever. It's not really like that, and there are a lot of like different circumstances and factors that go into being named like an All-American in a sport like acrobatics and tumbling where it's so subjective. And so I just think that you need to want something just enough, but don't put your entire identity and like worth into reaching those goals because like you really can't predict it. And I really do live by like nothing. I won't say nothing. Very few things are that serious. Yeah.
Well, I think what I hear in there too is that you just focus on the present moment, right? I think sometimes and I can kind of say this for myself, and maybe one of my pitfalls is I would be someone who's maybe too hungry, right? And wanting to be, XYZ, whether it's me as an athlete or now me as a coach is, kind of wanting something so bad in the future that you don't live in the present.
Yeah.
And I think for you, it's just like you want to be hungry, you want to be in the present, you want to get better at each day, right? You're not going to go show up and just go through the motions and do a shitty job. No, you're gonna show up and do great. And at the same time, just be present in that and focus on what you can control. Like a lot of things, kind of what you just said are out of your control, right?
Yeah.
Like you may be in a class where you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if there was probably an MVP for acro and tumbling right now, what's her name at Baylor right now?
Oh, Bailey, yeah.
Right? If you happen to be in the same time period as Bailey or Michael Jordan or LeBron James, you're going to earn less MVPs.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, you may be striving, you may be doing your best.
Yeah, there's always someone better.
There's always someone better, and genetics really do come and play a big role at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so, as we kind of hit the the team event. When it comes to acro and tumbling, the team event is the last event for acro and tumbling. And then I always like to say a 2-minute warning for, you got football, 2 minutes left and for a basketball game. What would your kind of like final piece of advice be to athletes of this generation and even coaches to, make sure that they maximize their experience as an athlete?
I think that the greatest superpower, I'm really sounding like Justin likes to call me Tony Lacewell when I'm being like inspirational,
Tony Lacewell,
like Tony Robbins. I really do think that like the greatest superpower you can have as like an athlete, and I think it's really helpful in life too, is to be present. Like people that can be really present in the moment, and not think like 30 steps ahead. I think that that's really helpful, especially for athletes who have the tendency to like think themselves into a spiral of, worst case scenario, and this is what I want to achieve in XYZ. So like what was your question? To maximize like the experience for athletes, like be there, like be present. Like team event, it was my favorite event because you get to see all these different moving parts. Like the music it was so loud, but like you could hear each other, you're like high-fiving each other, smacking asses like on the mat. That's like, I'm so glad that I was able to like remain present during that time when I had a lot of teammates who would get so in their head, they like black out basically. And then like by the end of the 2 minutes, like, I don't know what happened. I don't know what hit. I don't know what fell. I don't know how my tumbling looked like. I'm just glad I got through it. And some people like need to do that. Like I get that too, but I just think stay present, and remember like why you're there. It's not just to like win something, like if you love your teammates. For me, it was never like really about winning. And I told you that. Like, I loved those girls, and I do love those girls so much, and it was so much fun. And like, I loved practice just as much as I love competing. But like, you're doing it together. Like, it's like a shared memory that you guys get to have, and like only me and however many girls, 30 other girls, like, are the only people that have that memory. And I think that that's really, like, that's motivating enough to me. So yeah, stay present.
Stay present. You get that for the rest of your life, right? Like, I still see my buddies that I won a state, no, not state, North Coast sections championship with, which is, it's super fun. And it's just, you look back, and I always tell them, right, at the end of the day, you're going to have men's leagues and co-ed leagues, but it's never going to be the same. So enjoy the moment now. Stay present.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time today, Addie. Thanks. I enjoyed our conversation.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for having Coop.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Bridging Impact Podcast. We'd love it if you would like, subscribe, leave a comment and a review on whatever platform you're on. It's the best way to help us grow. We appreciate you for doing that. We'll shout you out on social media. I'd also love if you connected with me on social media. Let me know your thoughts. And this is why I do it. I want to share knowledge and wisdom from experienced leaders to people like yourself and myself, so we can have this dialogue and move forward, make an impact on the world. So stay tuned, stay subscribed. Cheers.